Hey folks, welcome back. As you can see, today I'm doing something a little bit out of the ordinary for my channel, at least in, I don't know, the last however many years. And that is an unboxing slash walkthrough, but also pairings, which is something that I do. I've been really excited for this particular package, and once in a while I just like to shake it up and do something that is just utterly playful and fun, really. So I'm not going to bore you or go into the myriad of reasons of why I don't tend to do unboxing type walkthrough videos, but as you can see, I have the 𝗵𝘀𝗿𝗺𝗺 tarot in front of me. If you do not know this deck, it has recently had a successful Kickstarter. If you do not know 𝗪𝗂𝗪𝗃 is the creator of Costal Curiosities. 𝗪𝗃 also goes by 𝗪𝗲𝗄𝗆 on socials, and this is 𝗪𝗃's first tarot deck. So as you can see, legitimately, I have not opened anything yet. I'm not going to make you watch me open them, but we're going to open them very quickly. I'm going to show you what's included, so if you don't want to see, you don't want spoilers, this is not going to be the video for you. If you want a review, this is not going to be the video for you. That's going to come a good several months down the line, at least. You know how my reviews work. For the main part, I have to have worked with the deck a good couple of months. If not, usually I'm reviewing decks that I've had for ages, so yeah. But let's get into this glorious package. We're back, although I'm realising there's one thing I didn't take out of the plastic. But other than that, we're back. And I thought I would dip into the little extras package first. So here I've got 3 stickers. The quality of the stickers is really interesting. They've almost got this metallic kind of feel to them. It's really hard to describe. I'm not doing it a service at all, but especially with the lovers, you can really feel the layers. It's just one of those things. You're going to have to take my word for it and see it in person. So I got the Fool, the Lovers, and 2 of Swords. And then this little cute thing is the digital guidebook download, which of course I'm going to have to put my thumb over because I didn't the first time. This is the cutest little field notes book ever. Look at this. Ironically, I was literally looking for something of the sort yesterday and stressing because I think I'd used them all. So this is actually very timely and going to come in handy. I love the nest. And then we've got a bookmark, again, which I adore. A double-sided bookmark. Oh, that's right. Sun, moon. Cute, right? I love it. And then we've got the Hermit, and it's signed. This is freaking stunning. What a beautiful print. Look at these wee babes either side. I really adore that, and I use prints quite a bit actually to decorate my space and just give it a different vibe. Sometimes I'll pop them up in one of my card holders instead of a card. It just really depends, but yes, I'm always actually really happy with a print like this, so yay. That's the little extras. Next up, let's have a look at the guidebook quickly, because I don't want to spend too much time on this, because it will definitely be something that I spend a lot of time on when I review the deck. We've got the Wonders and Wanderings Peculiar Pathways supplement. Now, one thing to know about this deck, which I can tell you up front, is that this is 𝗪𝗃's first Rider-Waite-Smith deck. And so one of the things that she was wanting to work with the traditional symbolism and meanings of the Rider-Waite-Smith system in particular. So that's what you're going to be working with in this. But putting her creative spin on it and working through her perspective, which obviously we love that. I know that a lot of people do really enjoy clones that are themed around their particular taste, but I like this kind of Rider-Waite-Smith inspired, but a further move from being a clone. We've got introduction, creative process, the artwork, the cards, the interpretations, how Lennox uses tarot, a final note, special thanks, the majors, the minors, and then they're split into their suits, and then references. So what I've noticed looking through this is that actually most of the guidebook is getting into the cards. There's no extra fluff. There is that nice exploration of a few key points, including the creative process and the artwork, which I feel like quite a lot of us are interested in. And one of the things that I appreciate about this being more of a concise intro is, whilst I understand the desire to walk everyone through the tarot as if it's their first ever deck, in case it is, for those of us who have been in and around tarot for a long time, it takes up a lot of space in a book. It's not necessarily giving us anything new. It's not necessarily inspiring. I do like them to be accessible to beginners, but some of the hand holding in some of the stuff is, yeah, just, I think it's quite refreshing, at least for me. I can't speak for anyone else, to not have a load of that taking up the book and then have less focus on the actual offerings in terms of the cards. And again, as someone who's been reading for a long time now, I love to see what the artist's intention was and how they weave that into the interpretation, but I'm not necessarily looking for a brand new concept on a card or to be sort of walked through its meaning. So I feel like this is going to potentially offer a lot more people across the board something, but that's just my initial thoughts. And so when you get into the book, you're going to see the Rider-Waite-Smith imagery depicted. And what Lennox does is she breaks it down, sort of the skeleton, if you like. Clearly I'm being inspired by death here, of all of the key symbols that exist across both of them. And then here we've got a selection of keywords. Let's have a look, because I know people want to know. The selection of keywords goes throughout, and we have the same treatment on the minors, which is something I hugely respect. I understand for some, especially if they're more numerologically focused or pip-like, there isn't always a need to discuss to the same degree the depiction and the scene, because there isn't always a scene and the symbolism might be very pared back. So here we've got a little bit that is in a different font. So we've got italics, which kind of makes me think like it's probably a discussional piece. Then we've got a breakdown of the meaning, which I can see already here from the camel skeleton portion is discussing what we're seeing. And then, like I said, the symbols. Look, if this isn't giving me Coastal's vibes, then I don't know what will. If you're not familiar with Coastals, this is sort of the vibe of the background on Coastals, and we are going to pair them at the end, spoilers. So I've popped the book off to the side, and now we're going to get in the cards. And I will quickly just say there are some replacement cards in here. Anyone who followed the Kickstarter and backed it, to be honest, anyone who follows Lennox on anything, because it was very transparent and the discussion was shared everywhere. There was several cards which Lennox wasn't happy with the printing quality of, and within under a month, I believe, the replacement cards were sorted out, but everyone will get a replacement card deck for these four, and you can use them if you want to. You can use the existing ones. Also, as I understand it, there may not even be a need for the replacements. She kindly has just put these in for all of us. So here we have the... I nearly forgot what this was called. It's just a box. Nice and simple. It's just a box. But it is, speaking of just boxes, it's rather glorious. I'm quite funny because I'm quite happy with a little tuck box, and it could be as bland as you like. It's not going to bother me. I'm much more here for the cards and their quality and what they're visually offering. And then if a guidebook comes with it, especially a juicy one like this, how much that's going to interest me. At the same time, I do, of course, appreciate the beauty that has gone into this box. It's quite stunning. I'm having a little bit of a moment with this deer, actually. It's very cute. I'm so excited about this deck because I think that it's going to go with a lot of oracles that I've been using and struggling to find pairings for, and not really based on an aesthetic thing, but more just vibes as well. Look at that. As I say, I don't normally have a moment with a box, but it's really, really gorgeous. So, and magnetic, if anyone was curious. So I wanted to just give it a moment. And it's got green matte edging, and it's linen cardstock. It's lovely. It's more matte than the Coastal Curiosities, which, to be honest, I already knew from Lennox putting it somewhere online, but also I can feel that it's more of a matte cardstock as well. So even more of a popular linen, I think. It's got that nice... when I say scratchy, I mean this in the nicest way possible. It's got a nice scratchy feel to it. I'm not going to talk about all of these because we would be here forever. But I do recognise from the 𝗪𝗿𝗺𝗀𝗃 that, of course, we've got the rose, we've got the dog. But in this instance, the dog is encapsulating the 𝗵𝘁, as opposed to being an addition that is either holding them back or trying to warn them of something. And so ever so slightly we've got a bit of a different nuance, a bit of a different layer here. I do enjoy seeing the way that the 𝗵𝘁 is interpreted, because I think that a lot of different decks do encompass different facets of the 𝗵𝘁, perhaps without even realising. It's one of those archetypes where it perhaps doesn't get as much attention as some of the others, in my opinion, but it's really interesting to see that. And a great book actually to read in regards to that is Radical Tarot, because the history of the 𝗵𝘁 and the discussion in there by Charlie was really, really insightful. And there was a couple of bits that I didn't know, hadn't remembered. So yeah, shout out to Charlie, and also my cat, who has just jumped on the back of my chair and wants lunch. So I'm going to feed her so she doesn't ruin this. Do you want lunch? There's only so long that you can buy silence in a house with a Bengal, so we'll see how we go. I also wanted to note some other things that I'd noticed. I can't remember the name of this plant, although I imagine it may well be mentioned in the book. And then we've got the ladybirds here either side as well. But like I say, I'm not going to get into every single card in a huge way because I would be here forever. And I feel like I'm going to notice different layers about different cards as I go through. Like obviously we've got the little ladybird here as well. So there's an element of luck, or at least the discussion of luck is being introduced. And one of the other things that I like about this deck, and looking at this, and how clever is this? I've just noticed it's almost like they're extra legs. We've got the magician's tools, but brought down to the pentacle, the cup, the sword, the wand, the table, and then the snake. I feel like it allows someone to enjoy the really key symbolism that the 𝗪𝗿𝗺𝗃𝗃 is offering us, but without the exposure fatigue, I guess, of the traditional 𝗪𝗿𝗺𝗃 imagery. Because if you're like me, then sometimes that's not as inspiring. I do appreciate the system and there are things that I love about it, and I have these waves of interest, but I really like how this deck goes about it. And of course, this art style, because it's similar to Coastal's, has something about it that I really enjoy. It's the layer of like the more natural world. It's really richly coloured. And then we've got this museum-like antiquated editions that really, for me at least, it's the first thing that draws my eye in. So all of the key symbols. And then I start breaking off into the additions, like the pomegranates here and the trees in the background. So I think it's a really fun way to do that, and to kind of make a point of some of the key symbols. Also, whilst not important to other people, I will say I'm very excited about how much this might pair with, because of the almost like the contradiction between those two layers and the stark monochrome and then the really rich background. That really excites me. Another thing I'm noticing here in the deer, this is actually a male deer. I think this is a lovely way of focusing in on the energy that's being discussed without it being trapped within the confines of a gender. So we've got the male deer here, and they are what is part of the symbol of the nourishing and nurturing energy of the Empress. We won't get into a whole animal discussion. I very much appreciate it. It's a lovely inclusion. And then we get into what appears to be a very sassy emperor. I'm loving it. Oh, how hilarious. They're adorable. Look at their cape. And the colours. I'm really appreciating the colours as well. And I'm sure there's a discussion of lots of this in the book, but like I said, the cat has returned to demonstrate her destructive qualities and demand attention, so we'll see how we get on. But here's the beautiful Lovers card, and honestly, I was just having a moment with the clouds, I think, especially in the sticker version of this. It's stunning. I don't want to keep repeating myself, but again, you can see some of the key elements. We've got the wings from the angel that we see above, right? Then we've got the snake, because of course that's part of the commentary in the 𝗪𝗿𝗺𝗀𝗃 and those religious connections as well. And then the apple, so the fruit bearing the option, as it were, the choice. And we have a chariot, and it does not have a chariot running towards me, which is, again, if I'm going to use my term exposure fatigue, or like just, yeah, I can't think of a different word for it, but even when they change the animals on the chariot, I just find it to be not enough of a stretch outside, even though I appreciate why the chariot is there and how that enforces the message. I'm really loving this kind of championship style. I want to say gauntlet. It is a gauntlet. I've double checked. I am happy with my memory today. It will not last. And then the strength card, which I'm a Leo. Strength is also my card for when you work out this life path and that thing, and it just always ends up coming back to the strength card. It's a big favourite of mine. It's definitely a card that I am quite invested in, although it would never ruin a deck for me, I don't think. And we've got the whole story of the lion and the mouse here going on, which is really cute. Look at little mousey on their butt. And we've still got the infinity, because I can't remember the other name for it ever, so I'm just not going to try anymore. I've given up. This is the beautiful hermit, of which I have the print, so we've seen this already. But again, the mushrooms. Anyway, I'm enjoying how each of these are framed. We've got the two bunnies, the two crystals, the two flowers. The framing feels really important to me. It's something that really brings the cards together, so I'm enjoying that. And this is a really cool Wheel of Fortune. Sorry, before I jump to the next one, I actually want to take a moment with this, because I usually do not like the Wheel of Fortune. It's a really hard card to please me with, so I usually just put up with it. Like, I have seen some cool depictions of it, but I think this is probably my favourite. And so here we've got the astrological symbols. And honestly, I'm just loving the cute decoration too. I'm here for it. And we've got justice and the eye. The eye, I'm just, yeah. I'm really drawn to the eye straight away. Oh, what an interesting, and I don't know, this, it's interesting because it feels confronting, although there's not someone hanging from this. What is this? I'm going to have to look it up in the book. Do excuse me. How interesting. So this is a life buoy, and it says here, a life-saving device offering cautious protection. The sense of preservation brings a whole existence to a different point of view. New heights force a break to gain inspiration from the situation. And then, of course, we've got the gallows. And we've got the chain is discussed as an object that controls yet also could assist. We've got the grasshopper. We've got the boars I mentioned. The manganese down here. And then the sky is also discussed. There's actually in the main write-up, which I don't want to read all of as well, grabbing a hold of the life buoy and getting out of your comfort zone, immersing yourself in different perspectives, getting new knowledge, various angles and understanding. I'm just grabbing key points out of it, by the by. Oh, and interestingly enough, it goes on to say that there were 5 completely different versions of this card before Lennox chose this one. So that's interesting in itself, the process of sort of being not forced, but having to go through that activity and staying in the process of creating this for longer feels very Hanged Man, does it not? We've got the Death card, and the first thing that I noticed in the Death card, and because we've already sort of looked at the camel skeleton, is actually the timer. It makes me think many things, actually, the timer. Apparently everything has been sent here to to destroy this recording. We're just gonna carry on going and hope for the best. We've got Temperance, and these are beautiful, aren't they? And the flowers. I'm really appreciative that the flowers are likely mentioned. I say likely, I think they were in another one. Let's have a very quick look so I can be more informative than doing guesswork. We've got the goldfish, the heron, the iris. Yes, beautiful. Thank you, Lennox, for mentioning those, because I'm a lot better with animals than I am with flowers. Oh, look at the devil. Look at this juiciness going on around here. Like, isn't this a luscious invitation to those kind of sensual, indulgent realms? That's what this is giving me. And then this very, very wonderfully peculiar, which is very fitting for the deck, goat that we've got with these bat-like wings, which I suppose is definitely meant to give us hellscape vibes anyway. What's interesting is they've actually broken free from the chains. For me, there's a little bit of commentary to be had about that, because I don't think the devil is always inherently a bad archetype. And that's not because I want to nice wash everything either. I just think that sometimes something can be denied, and to the point that it's too far in the other direction. Also, goats are great escape artists. They are little menaces when it comes to this. I know that from having a goat myself years ago. He was incredible at being here, there and everywhere that he wasn't meant to be, even though he had so much land to roam. I also know that Lennox has goats, so I'm sure that they heavily influenced this, perhaps. And look at the colours. I'm saying that because I feel like there's going to be a lot of colour play in this for me, but we know that's something that I do anyway. And these little pansies at the front. Look at all the lightning as well. And yet I would still like to live here. I'm like, oh, look at their house. We've got the star, and I suppose the idea of the vessel container that we usually see pouring the water from, which is an interesting invitation to think about the idea of almost bottling faith, perhaps it being something that I try and feed so that there's something to connect into when I need it most. I don't know that I'm explaining that very well, but I've been doing a lot of work with the star over recent years just because of some internal friction that I had with it, not when reading for other people, but more so when it was coming up in my life, in my readings. So it's been a really interesting point in which to explore. And then we've got the moon. This is stunning. And so here it breaks that format, but the reason that it breaks the symmetry format is because, of course, we've got the hound on one side and the wolf on the other. I wish that you could see the layering through the camera, but I don't feel like that's necessarily going to be a thing. Also, look at the skies in these 4 as we move from the star to the moon, through the sun and into Judgment. Oh, we completely skipped past the sun though, didn't we? Sorry, 𝗺cie. I'm having a Humpty Dumpty moment It's just me being silly. I love that the horse has a feather. I love that the horse doesn't have the child on the back of it as well. I'm really done with that. So thank you for this. And these sunflowers, they're gorgeous. And then Judgment. I really enjoy that this Judgment has a bit of a stark feel to it, in my opinion, because I think that there is a certain weight to this, and sometimes it gets caught up in the religious aspect of that rather than the more general sort of commentary about the card. And here we've got the world with the little animal inclusions. Very, very, very cute. These look like dandelions to me, which if so, I love that, because dandelions seem to make it no matter what. And wouldn't that be like a lovely finished reminder for the world that because we're going to return to the cycle and return to the cycle and return to the cycle, because that's how things go while we're alive. There's something about that strength and that resilience of the dandelion, I guess, that feels very inspiring to me. And yet the spider has left their web, or the web is unfinished, or something about that. And then here we've got the idea of there's a little bit of thread, and it could be picked up, and it could, even though that's the end of the thread, we could either weave something entirely new, or we could sort of doctor it and start again that way. And I like that both options are sort of available, at least from the way that I read it intuitively. So we'll move through these a tiny bit faster because I do want to do the pairings. And like I say, I'm sure that my initial thoughts aren't exactly the most insightful. But we're getting into the wands. This one's a very flashy, the ace, with this pretty bow all tied around. Interestingly enough, because it's the ace, whilst I did notice this very quickly, I then moved on to the background imagery and was sort of exploring it. It would be a really fun deck to do those kind of meditational or journeying pieces where you try and move into the image of the card and move through the landscape that you're seeing, if you're someone who's quite visual, because if not, that would be very challenging. I love the chameleon here. I have no thoughts as to why they're there currently. I'm sure there's a lovely discussion of it, but I'm just enjoying the fact that they are indeed there. This also feels more like the conception of something, and it's still, you know, they're still mapping out where they want to go on the world. They've not kind of put their pointer in and picked that yet. Whereas the boat could be considered as leaving. I'll be honest, I don't know which way is the front. So I'm just going to say that the idea of it leaving the harbour here and going off on its journey kind of breaks that up for me. These little raccoons. Hilarious. I'd love to know what the acorns are there for, but I'm not going to keep stopping. And then we've got the Four of Wands. I love the gazebo type celebratory, but very much in keeping with the kind of, I want to say, the era and style that this feels like those parts are set in. Excellent. What a fabulous lighter this would be. And look at the inclusion. So we've got an insect. I don't know whether it's a gnat, but maybe just because I was thinking Five of Wands, that's what came to me. And then you've got some sort of moth or butterfly. Then we've got the lizard. It also makes me think of that rhyme where it's the dog that ate the cat that ate the spider. I can't remember it clearly, but if anyone knows that, I think it might have been a nursery rhyme in the house that Jack built. I'm sure that that's what it's called. It was giving me those vibes. It's like the chaos of bringing the one animal in to try and deal with the other one and the other one and the other one and the other one. It works for me, even if I can't explain it or recall it very well for everyone else. And then we've got the Six of Wands, and you can see that they've got the wreath around the horse's neck, which I'm loving. I'm very much not missing the riders of the horses, and that's not because I'm not I'm not really a horse girl because I don't ride anymore, but I used to. It's just that it's that sort of refreshing change up for me, and then I get to explore all of these animal inclusions, which juicy, juicy, juicy. We've got the sevens with the dog and the squirrel. And the squirrel's stolen the dog's bone. Yes. I love this. I could wax lyrically about this for hours, so I'm not going to. But it's a really interesting stance on the act of, I suppose, defending oneself and reflecting on how that came to be. And also, I like the invitation to explore with someone, if I was reading for someone else, who they are in this instance or who they're rooting for, because that in itself is interesting. A friend and I recently had a discussion about a fox trying to get a squirrel and sort of not rooting for either of them. And I was thinking it's interesting because a lot of people I know would definitely have been rooting for the squirrel to survive. And there's this desire for the immediacy of that survival. But then what if the fox hasn't eaten for days and days and days on end? And everyone probably knows by now that I love to have those discussions. They really intrigue me. And it's not about someone being right and then therefore there being a wrong answer. It's more about having the exploration and then discussing why is that for us. There is no right and wrong answer. It's just about the why. It sort of gets us into exploring our beliefs and how we are invested in them and how we then look through them into the rest of the world, you know? That's my agenda with that anyway. And then the Eight of Wands. This is fun. Especially the dragon. I feel like if a dragon could ride one of these and come in kind of unseen and not no one expecting them, I feel like that would definitely be something they would enjoy as well. Yeah, I just felt like they were hiding out behind the sort of, I can't remember, the sail, that's it. That's the word I want. The sail's like billowing and they're sort of hidden behind it. This is freaking stunning. I'll be really intrigued to explore this because straight away I obviously go into my animal agenda as always. I don't want to bore everyone to tears. People are there for that on my Patreon, and I know that those people genuinely enjoy it, so I try and keep it short here. But even the idea of how things become endangered and the concept of preservation that comes into the Nine of Wands, sort of how humans have affected wolf communities in particular, but also vultures, and the way that we frame those types of predators as well. There's a lot to be, and this kind of idea of what's extinct. It brings me a lot of themes that I could get into that very much mesh my two worlds and two of my main interests together. And then we've got the Ten of Wands here with some kind of eagle claws or something about to take this away. But they're going to have a bit of a nasty fright because I'd imagine these not only are very spiky, but I get the sense they'd be really heavy. That would be quite a difficult weight to carry. And then we get into our cults. So this is our first time seeing our cults. Is this not whimsical as hell? We got the wand here. We got the salamanders. I feel like seeing a cactus flower, if you've ever owned one at least, is like a huge deal. It was for me. It took my cactus years, and it wasn't because it didn't have everything it needed. It was really much just a process. So yeah, I like it's kind of fancy and fun. We've got another one here. Is that, aha, it is a theme. I tried not to expose myself to too much of this deck before it came out. So I'll have either forgotten because I've got a terrible memory or didn't look enough. And that's why I'm probably surprised by things that people already knew. We've got another one of these glorious horses. They look so strong with the majestic wings and then the knight's helmet. And we've got different kind of lizards here. I'm not going to guess what they are. I will say it did make me think of a little bit of the skinks that I saw on holiday. This Queen of Wands I did know about. I'd clearly just forgotten about this crown because this is everything to me. I love the Queen of Wands. I am not that person who feels like there has to be a cat in the card, but because I am a cat lady, I am someone who wants a cat in the card just based on that alone. So this makes me endlessly happy. I cannot tell you. And then, of course, we've got this glorious reptilian king as well. The animal inclusions are just giving me life. And again, the sort of background and this kind of arid desert region, it gives me the element and that sort of fiery, warm sensation that I associate with it, and I'm sure most of us do. So that feels very fitting. Here we move into the Ace of Cups, and we've got water lilies, and then it's really sort of plush and flourishing in that way that when something has a good amount of all of the conditions it needs, including the water, so it's really like humans, you know, it's hydrated, it's flourishing, it's in its lane. I like that. And we've got the 2 here with the hare and the tortoise. What an interesting way of going about the 2. I like that. If you know the story of the hare and the tortoise, then you'll understand why that really intrigues me. And here we've got, I want to say geese. Also, we've got gooseberries, we've got pumpkins, we've got some fungi there. This is all very full. This is a good time. And I'm happy to see geese being celebrated and not demonised. I know they're loud, they're vocal and all of the things, but I'm here for the geese still. We've got the 4, which is really interesting with this shell kind of covering their view. As we've come up to it, I will just show you here, the 5 of Cups, we've got the other option, but I'm sure this will make Lennox twitch if she ever watches this. I kind of like the concept of the colour bleeding into the heart for the 5. Just saying. I'm not mad at it. I can, of course, see the tone difference between the 2 of them, but I'm really not mad at what's happened with this one. It just so happens to be working for me. Really loving the female mallard ducks here as well. They're so cute. And the only reason I know they're female is because of the colouring. And can you see it's a grenade? So it's a grenade for the heart. Yes. Now I'm really intrigued to see what Lennox does with the 3 of Swords, because I imagine that will then be quite refreshing. We will see. The 6 of Cups, look at all of this. I love it. And this little tortoise carrying it all. And then the 7 of Cups, and this is like a treasure trove of just obscurities. I love it. It reminds me of walking into a thrift shop. You know, one that's got lots of stuff in it, and you're in there trying to discover everything at once, and sometimes it's overwhelming in a good way, and sometimes it's just too much and you need to go and take a breather. I mean, that's a very superficial example of that, but it's a fun one, right? And then the 8, I like the concept of having to move through this door and past the, I want to say, scorpion. There's something eerie about it. And again, is it the frog that the scorpion sits on to pass through the water, or am I thinking of the wrong animal? There's definitely something with the scorpion and water. I feel like there's some really fun, I don't know whether you would call them fables or whether they count as other kinds of tales, but I feel like there's some of that woven in here, so I'll be curious again to see what comes up in the book from that. And the 9 of Cups, isn't this fancy? There's something rather lavish about this, just hanging in this cave as well. It's like really beyond what is necessary, but in that fun kind of way. And also, again, the 9 of Cups Rider-Waite-Smith, not my favourite depiction of that card at all. And this 10 of Cups is absolutely beautiful, and I'm loving that this laces round in that kind of intertwining. This portion of it sort of looks like the infinity loop. We've got the heart here in the key. There's something really precious about having that key and the momentary act of opening something or locking something. And also the two rings together and mimicking that as well. I think that this is really beautiful. We've kept the rainbow and we've got rid of the very traditional family depiction, which I'm happy to farewell. And you can see we've got the hats again. I'm loving the hats. I feel like I'm going to enjoy looking at the pages the most and seeing, I feel like the pages are very different from each other. Not that all of them aren't, but because the knight helmet is definitely different, but yeah. The fancy hats, they're great. We've got the page and we've got the fish coming out, which is very traditional. I'm loving the wall tree background. It's making me want to go back to the ocean. I'm getting like joy and sad nostalgia all at once. And then we've got the knight, and again we've got this gloriously winged. So is that technically a Pegasus? I'm going to stop saying winged horse. I am sure that's what a Pegasus is. For the Queen of Cups, we have got a seahorse, and look at the detailing in this cup. I mean, seriously, I've not been doing this justice, so let's just take a moment. And then finally, we've got very sea serpenty, quite fierce vibes for the King of Cups, actually. And what that takes to be able to, I suppose, navigate the harsh realities of the ocean, as it were, that I love about this. And you can see the waves are a little bit more active in this one than they are in the Queen as well. And again, like, I'm just never going to do justice to all of the bits I'm noticing, but I loved it. And then we get into the suit of swords and have this beautifully airy feel about it, and another nice fancy bow. I love this. So the key is inside the bottle, and then the bottle's got the blindfold around it. How interesting. Look at the colour as well. It's very much giving that Two of Swords traditional colour vibe. And then the Three of Swords is one that I remember for the mirror. So why did I even say, what does she do in the Three of Swords? This is one of the most ingenious things about the deck. So I'll use a spare card because thankfully we have it. We move the heart into the actual suit that is of the heart. I'm not saying there isn't moments where this doesn't come up in the other aspects of the deck, but I feel like the fact that this is communication or intellect, thought, and those kind of things gets very lost in the traditional depiction of the Three of Swords. And the idea of emotive insight and how that has a relationship with how we see the world, or what we do experience that's mirrored back to us from how we create that. I just think that there's more to be acknowledged within the Three of Swords, that this does so much more astutely for me than the traditional. So I really love that the heart is in a different card and that it's anatomical, because I enjoy that. And then we've got this mirror. Oh, and the spider. Hello, little spider. That in itself I could get into, but I won't. We've got the 4 here, and it feels like this has been around forever. You know, this has been waiting around, bits have come off of it. There's now other animals making their home on it. There's all of these plants sort of growing on and around it. I love that for that restful feeling. It reminds me of a, not the visual, but the concept of it reminds me of a deck. And I really wish I could remember the name of it, but I can't. But the whole theme of the deck sort of takes place in what looks like that kind of castle, but like antique furniture kind of space. Someone's going to tell me what that deck is if I'm making any sense. And I'm going to be like, that's the one. 5 of Swords, we've got the raccoons, who are very good at getting into these things, by the way. And then there's something else entirely going on here, which I'll be excited to explore. And then we've got the 6. This is reminding me of another fable or a story, and I can't put my finger on it, which is going to irritate me now in an okay way. But I love that they've got the compass as well. And then this caterpillar is just, it almost looks like, you know, when caterpillars come down and they drop down, usually by accident in my experience, from where they were dangling on a leaf or a tree. I'm sorry if we've had a bit of camera wobble, by the way. I've had to charge my phone. This has been a whole thing, but I refuse to stop at this stage. We've got the 7 here. Isn't it interesting that the concept of our mind's eye is being held, and then there's this gate in front of it, like something is tampering with our inability to have clarity of mind, and that's why the reflection is needed, because there's something in the way of it. There's something that is constricting it, I guess, which is the way that I prefer to come at the 7 of Swords than just immediately someone must be doing something underhand. The 8 of Swords with a chrysalis. Yes, love this. I really love this because, again, I'm not going to talk about it too much, but what goes on in a chrysalis, while this is all very beautiful and a great metaphor, it's important to remember that what goes on in there it's an undertaking, and it's literally the breaking down of everything that the caterpillar had come to be, almost, and then forming all of these new body parts and aspects of themselves that they have been kind of waiting to develop. Because I think that often when we think about the entrapment of the 8 of Swords, many of us recognise that it can be self-created, but sometimes we don't consider if we needed to really be in that space for longer to become aware of it, so that we could do it a different way rather than repeat the cycle. And so I like the idea of that. And then the 9 of Swords with the bed. Very, very huge butterflies. I feel like this bed is a particular style of bed, but I can't place it right now. It gives me the 9 of Swords mood, but not in the same way. That will be an interesting one to get into. And, oh, look at the 10. Look at that. That's one of those ones I want to sit with and write down what comes out in like a whole stream of just following where the natural sort of narrative takes me, rather than trying to explain it to someone else. But I really like that. The candle is a great inclusion as well. Okay, so we've got no hat for this page, but this page has sword in hand, and then these glorious birds flying overhead. Also, these are great. I love all the little animal inclusions. I'm going to have so much fun exploring that at a later point. And then we get into our knight, and I feel like for the knights, because we've often got the Pegasus and the knight helmet, then a lot of what we're being drawn into with the energy is more about the additional symbolism. So we've got the crystals here, this looks like smoky quartz, the animals, and the sort of feel of where we are as well. So what you would take from what you know about these, or what you read about these symbols, and sort of layering it in. I won't have an opinion on it yet as to how beginner to intermediate friendly it sits on that spectrum. But what I will say is that some of this, you'll have that leaning into your pre-existing knowledge, and then some of it will be the layering of all the additional stuff, which you won't have to go and Google. If you've got the book, you can... Well, I say if you've got the book is available via PDF no matter what. So everyone's got the book. So it means you won't have to go and do extra legwork and try and identify what certain things are as well, because that information's there. I'm loving the butterfly. I've been hanging out with butterfly a bit recently, and I feel like it's wonderfully fitting for the air suit for obvious reasons, but also there's some gnosis layerings that I would add on to that. And then we've got the king as well. So I like that, utilising the animals. Most common, I guess, elemental association. That's always fun. And you can see here that depending on where you pull them, they're either flying apart or they could be flying towards each other. So I like the directionality of these. And again, the moons, they're facing out in this one and in that one. Especially if you're familiar with moon phases, that's something you can add in. And then finally, we're in the Ace of Coins. And this is getting really plush. Look at it. It's like secret garden material is going on right here. And then we've got the beetles down here. This is beautiful. This is definitely my favourite ace. Fantastic. Look at this one. This is a balancing axe if I ever did see one. This wheel down here, or cog, sort of looks like, it looks like part of machinery actually, but it's very much acting as the unicycle. And then we've got the barrel, which very much fits with the theme. And then the dice being slung around. Yes. Also, dice are going to be mentioned at the end of this, so I like that addition. That's fun. It very much makes me feel like it's in motion. And here we've got the 3. And so some of the tools that might go into the original frieze kind of getting together and physically creating something. So that's what we're seeing. Maybe a document that they've agreed. This is the plan. This is the go ahead. Oh, lovely. Look at that. Microscope. I really, really love that. So does 𝗬𝗎. She's returned to create chaos. This one holds a lot of sentiment to me because actually what we have here is a stag beetle, and stag beetles have a really rough run of it actually. It's something that I try and promote awareness of every year because they spend most of their lives underground. They don't really adapt to the Earth's changes and the way society and the above world has changed. And therefore, they're very, very vulnerable when they come out, and they come out just for kind of mating season, really. And you can imagine that they just get crushed underfoot and all of the roads and stuff. So it's quite a thing that I'm passionate about. And so this coming up on the 5 of Coins, which is a card that I get a lot. I know I've been calling it pentacles, coins, whatever you want to call it. But yeah, this coming up, it has some real resonance with me, and I suppose the physical hurdles that exist being disabled and having chronic pain. So I really resonate with that card. And now I'm thinking, does coins count as a name change? Because isn't it Pentacles in the Rider-Waite-Smith? My brain's not giving it up to me. And either way, coins, pentacles, you know what you're dealing with. We see a lot more coin imagery in this, I guess. And we've got the 6 here. And we see the scales used a few times. But the 6 is a really fun way to bring the scales back into the conversation, because this time we're looking at the balancing act of what we have versus what we can give. You know, that receptivity and the power of giving and putting out into the world, which is constantly changing. So the scales will always be moving up and down, but we aim to keep them as even as possible in an ideal situation. The 7 of Coins, this is probably one of my favourites. I just really love that we've got the gardening tool and it's just pushed into the earth. I'm really loving the animal inclusions. It looks like we've got some sort of wheat or something like that decorating it as well. And we're getting ready to kind of like continue toiling the fields. We move into the 8 and that upper layer of mastery, which feels very fitting to then have beavers in it, because they are absolutely amazing at the kind of construction and how that reinforces the environment and so much of what we need. Animals, they all have their jobs, and I know it's not like a job in the same way as ours, but they all add such important layers to the environment, and yet I just feel like it's not something we're necessarily educated on. And perhaps if we were, we would treat them differently. The 9 of Coins with the key animals in focus instead. Yes, please. And look at the little bumblebees here as well. So cute. Love the colour. It's very, I want to live in this one, I think. This is really sweet with the dogs from the 10. And again, we don't fall into that kind of familial setup or whatever's going on in the 10, because it still sort of feels that way to me, but not, I suppose, not as much or as obviously as the Rider-Waite-Smith 10 of Cups. But I love this, and all of the berries around here as well. Again, it feels very lush, very ripe and ready, very, you know, at the best final stage before we move into the decay and the renewal of the cycle. And then here we've got the page, and we've got our final little hat. Oh, I love the hats. It's so good. And then we've got our final Pegasus. And what a beauty this one is. And I'm loving the acorns, because I see this knight as the slowest and most steady expression. And so the process of the acorn into the oak feels incredibly fitting as part of that narrative. I keep calling them pentacles, by the way, the coins. They're beautiful either way. Let's have a look at these two together. Aren't they stunning? So we've got a hare here, or a rabbit. I'm going to go rabbit, actually, based on the ears and the shaping of them. And then we've got this beautiful bull. I'm loving their crowns. And again, these are both very pentacles backgrounds. They very much lead me to just want to get lost in the imagery and go and live off in these countrysides, have some strawberry snacks, and yeah, live my best life. I'm sure that many of us would like to do that, right? That can't just be a me thing. So I'm going to pause this. I'm going to make some space on my phone, go to my physio appointment. You're all going to see this in the blink of an eye. And then we're going to get into pairings, which I am super excited for. It's pairing time. I just had to show these ones with their boxes first because, I don't know, it's fun. And one of the things that I wanted to speak to that I've really enjoyed about these particular decks is, although Lennox, as far as I understand her discussion of them, has considered these sister decks in the same way that perhaps the 𝗪𝘀𝗪𝗀 and the Maiden Oracle, I'm trying to think of other examples, the Wild Unknown and the Wild Unknown Animal Spirit. There's a few. One of the things I noticed is that with some of those, I'm less inclined to pair them together as I am with others. Sometimes it's a little bit too samey. Not always, it just depends. And it doesn't usually stop me from getting the decks because I like the artist's style, interpretation of things, way they go about things. Not always, but if I like someone, I am more likely to get an oracle or a tarot after getting one of the others. But I don't feel like these compete with each other in that way. It's rather that they speak to each other in a really complementary visual fashion without being too the same. Does that make sense? Hopefully. So I'm going to unbox them quickly and we're going to look at them together and then with some other decks. I've taken some of the tarot out just for the purposes of one not being too stacked in comparison to the other. Otherwise, here we are, Peculiar Pathways, Coastal Curiosities. And this just happened to fall on this for the split, but I mean, I'm having a moment with the colours. Also, isn't this what was inside the book? Similarly, not the same, but can you now see? Why it was giving me coastal vibes. I love it. And so the difference is here is that the layering in the coastal has some of the colours on top of the black and white imagery. And then what you've got going on is perhaps a more intricate background, but obviously also a seamless. And so here with Sharp, we've got only a little bit of the black and white, but it's still there. What I'm really loving is how I'm noticing particular colours really drawing me in, which I just think I must be having more of a moment with colours than usual. I fear that this is going to start boring people, if I'm honest. I can't help myself. It's just a thing that I really enjoy. I don't always bring it into a reading in the grandest way either. It just depends what I'm doing. but certainly I'm feeling, of course, all the blues and then the red flowers here, which, whilst not the same, don't look too dissimilar. I like the idea of sharp, and then I look at the unicorn meets Pegasus. I don't know the term for this. Is it just a unicorn with wings? Unicorn fans, you can let me know. But of course, they were meant to be used together. They are glorious counterparts for each other, and like I said, in a way where for me it just doesn't feel too samey at all. If anything, the Costals feels a little bit more playful to me, and whilst I'm not saying that the 𝗪𝗁𝗄𝗧 isn't playful, there is that certain layer of, again, seriousness isn't the right word, but I guess it is a little bit more that way inclined to me, despite all of the fantastical and wonderful inclusions in it. I just feel like they lean ever so slightly in the opposite direction whilst being really complementary. How good is withdraw with Four of Swords? That's definitely something I associate with the Four of Swords, and often it could be withdrawing from a particular narrative, story, train of thought that I've just been repeating in my head, or it could be withdrawing from the busyness of being around others because of the level of conversation and communication, and just allowing my mind to be a little bit more spacious and free of that if possible. So I feel like they're very fitting. What I love is the sheer dedication or maybe it's just being really stubborn, because I feel like most people would have just recorded this another day by this point because of how often I've been interrupted. But I'm not, because I've already paid for this in energy and time that my body is going to feel later. So I'm going to carry on. Impulse feels really fitting with the Three of Swords, and I feel like impulse is a really difficult place to be because I don't feel like they're some of the best decisions that we make. Going, again, like I said, on a very Rider-Waite-Smith basis for the three. And the difficulty in feeling really clear with where we are, perhaps we're being more reactive than responsive. And it almost feels like a warning to me to slow down and take a look at how I'm thinking and what's going on before I move with it, rather than acting impulsively. Now, I might get a different message from that on a different day. Also, loving the little hints of green, pulling these two together. Two of Swords and Lively, that would be an interesting one to work with. And I'm not going to give all of the meanings now because we would be sitting here whilst I processed. I just am enjoying these two together, let's just say that, because like I say, it was a made to be this way, but one in which I resonate with visually. Unearthing something from the depths of more of our unconscious with a moon, or perhaps just something that we've tried to suppress because we really didn't want to engage with it. Six of Cups and observe. That's really beautiful. I love observing beautiful moments in the Six of Cups that other people are, when other people are like having those really Six of Cups moments. So I'm going to stop there with these two, and we're going to have a little look at some of the other pairings that I have initially thought of, and one that I was inspired by based on someone else's share on Instagram. So perhaps we'll start with that one. So that pairing was the Birds Oracle. I've got the Birds Oracle 1 and 2. I don't think that they're available anymore. Sorry, folks. Really loving these. I know I kept the Six of Cups out, but hey ho. Pigeons do bring me Six of Cups joy, I have to say. Big pigeon fan. And I was really surprised at the response I had to the one pairing that I saw of these on Instagram, but it was so good. It was so good. And I think it's probably, again, the play of light and dark, and then the line details versus the more sort of intricate penciling. Does it make sense? Is it working for you as much as it is for me, or perhaps not? The colours of the bird here as well. just with the backing. Blue jays. I was talking to Lennox actually about blue jays the other day. And it's interesting because behaviourally, apparently they're very similar to the Eurasian jays that we have over here, which are like a tanny colour predominantly, like tans and browns. But the ones that I've observed are far more reserved and keep themselves to themselves. So perhaps it's just the ones that I've seen locally. Both of the birds here have a black and white thing going on, and then we've got the reddish pink hues which match the butterfly, which I know is basically an aesthetic thing, but it's okay. I enjoy it. I just feel like the cat wants to eat the birds in that one, to be honest. I don't know, I really like them together. Again, colour is a big theme, but also I feel like this is a very animal friendly deck, and this is a deck where sometimes I don't know what every single bird is off the top of my head. I'm not familiar with them, and so I do have to go to the guidebook and have a little read. Therefore, not a deck that I use with clients, but it's a very fun, nourishing deck in my practice just for me. Whereas the tarot, I can rely on it, I know it, I understand it, so it would be a fun one to mix in with this, because so far I've only used a few decks with a Bird's Oracle, and otherwise it tends to get used on its own. So for this next pairing, I may actually need to bump up the cards a little bit, and for this one I have chosen the Flower Oracle, which is a newer to me inclusion that I am just having the best time with. I've been pairing it lots with the Antique Anatomy Tarot, but I'm feeling it in this one because of how much flora there is just throughout, especially when you do the one tarot card either side with this as the central theme. I just feel like that's going to be really lovely. And look at the marigold colour sort of showing up here. I love the Queen of Cups as a homecoming as well. It feels very heartfelt, but also a really coming to a space with our intuition, which I don't think is something that many of us are necessarily taught to hone when we're younger, and sometimes it can be something that isn't an immediately and easily accessible experience, whereas within our spirituality, that's certainly something that many of us try to engage with and work with and encourage. And then whilst I did try and shuffle these very briefly, we go straight into the Knight of Cups. But again, look at how much green lush vibes are coming in, with the Knight of Cups being the gardener. Oh, the emotional gardener of care, stewardship and reciprocity. That feels very, very fitting. It's adding some really interesting nuances to this. The Four of Coins with honey possum, so charm, uniqueness and evolution. I often read the Four of Coins as a space to hold some structure, so not always just withholding from sharing or hoarding, but being able to have a little bit of healthy stasis, as it were. Just try and be within the structure without adding too much, overwhelming ourselves or taking something away really quickly. Not going into those extremes, I suppose. And I like that as a key point in our evolution, that slowing down sometimes is really beneficial for that. One of my favourites. This, how sweet is this? So bringing hope, daring and consolation to the experience of the Five of Coins. So quite a gentle, nurturing, uplifting addition to the challenges that often we're in the midst of when the Five of Coins comes up for us in a personal reading. The Knight of Coins for Poppy, so dreams, peace and relief. Again, I'm not going to read all of them, and again, I've not shuffled very well. I do like sensitivity coming in for the Page of Coins. I often think of the physical realm and sometimes when I'm in the page of coins, I'm in more of a sensitive space physically and in relation to my environment and what's surrounding me in a very tangible way. Oh, yes, lovely, lovely. I love the bee. I think that you have to be quite diligent to get to this 10 of coins point, but also I love the idea that it's essential to have these experiences, and not everyone is fortunate enough to be in them for very long or to have them. But it does feel like it's something that's essential for our well-being on a larger scale. So I feel like these two are working well together. And one of the key points for me is that when I actually use these pairings in motion, whatever you want to call it, and when I am actually using them in my practice, rather than talking in a strange way, I'm actually using a couple of tarot cards versus one oracle. It's just, I find it really difficult to do that layup on camera. But yeah, I think we're going to stop here. Queen of Swords for poet, composition, imagination and play. Something really lovely about play coming through for the Queen of Swords, who often has, I feel like, almost a negative skew to that cult that seems to have carried through so many decks, rather than there really being an acknowledgement of the power in that card as well. I know that some of the readers that I really love engaging with and follow it, they speak to that a lot themselves because it's a card that they identify with. But in terms of actual write-ups and things like that, often. So I'm actually really happy to see some of the softness around the edges of this, and also in the poet here, we've got some little moths and butterflies included, which is kind of cool. So these two are definitely one that I'm going to enjoy together, I think. Because I had taken ages going through the deck itself, I didn't want to do too many more pairings. So this is the last card pairing, and this is a selection of cards from the 100 Ink Animals. The very detailed, like, fine line artwork and the white space, just, I automatically thought of this as a good pairing for this. And that's what I meant by, I think that this is very versatile for me. But also the animals make sense because this has got some animal inclusion, but it doesn't feel too hefty in terms of, it's not an animal tarot in the same way that I would classify others. So I don't mind using an animal oracle to go with it. Also, the 100 Ink Animals, its spaciousness and the way it's styled, it makes it feel very kind of, I guess, unassuming. I don't know the word that I want. I've had a long day, folks. But it's not too heavy-handed. There's not too much pressure. This is interesting because it really gives you a slant to how this Ace of Wands is coming through. So it adds the nuance, the build-up to get to this point. Although it's a seed, although there's lots of potential within these, what we have to do to get from the ace into the movement of them. Now, I know that some people would say, well, there's no plan because it's an ace, but I think with the cyclical nature of them, certainly aces have showed up for me before when they're speaking to an idea, and the thing that's kind of stopped me from getting the idea to start moving and flourishing is the lack of participating in that, because there's all this pressure going on with the way to go about it rather than just going about it. The spider with the world. I mean, are we finished? I'm like, I'm done. This is perfection. I love it. I love garden spiders as well. Look at that plush. I was going to say but, I mean loosely. Indulge the lovers. Is it tempting us to take the bite of the apple? Is this the way forward? Pacing ourselves with the Four of Cups. Emote in the Hierophant. That's a really interesting one. Bringing a different kind of wisdom to the table beyond what sometimes, or often rather, is associated with wisdom. I like difference for the Emperor, because firstly this is a sassy little being, and secondly I feel like doing the Emperor differently is one of the things that changes some of those structural foundations. So rather than just stepping into it and doing the same thing, we can still shake those up. It doesn't have to be like the status quo just because it's the Emperor, you know? Ooh, immersing ourselves in death. I mean, is there any other way to get through that part of the cycle? I'm not sure that there is. And then we will finish here with the vulnerability of being in the Hanged Man, which I feel like really calls in some of those old hangman nuances as well, where yes, we're suspended and there's lots of great ways at looking at that, but also there's a real discomfort in this archetype in a vulnerable state. Again, very happy with those. Now I'm going to show you just something a little bit different to end. So I've got my cards and we're going to give them a shuffle because I haven't read from the book yet either, as promised, but I just want to show you them with my dice. Now, if you haven't seen already, Dawn and Lisa have done a really cool dice system, which I was fortunate enough to get to trial a little bit before it came out as well, which is something I was doing. And I am going to roll all of the dice just so I can show you what they look like. But I will then pull out the ones that I have been predominantly using. Look at how well these dice go with this. And yes, I am enjoying matching my dice to decks. These dice are like got a mossy grass type thing in them and then little flowers. Currently with the cards, when I'm doing a card and dice reading, I haven't been using all of them. I'm trying to remember. I haven't been doing the one that falls under the percentage, and no, I'm not going to remember it all off by heart. I haven't been using the D20 because that's an archetype one and I haven't wanted to overload myself. Predominantly I've been using these for I know that this one here is the elements straight off the bat, and then one of them is synced up to the moon phases, or at least loosely, I believe. In fact, let me just pull up the information so I can tell you exactly what I have been reading with them. So I've been using the element one a lot because even though elements do come up in the tarot, it's felt like an interesting focal point for me overall. So far, it seems to be working, which in this one I got Earth because I'm on 4. The next is the advice one, which I feel like has been giving it more nuance. And so here I've got within justice, there's something around sensuality. So the breakdown is creativity, intimacy and passion. Certainly passion and creativity feel like key points with this one. Then we've got it's this one, the 8-sided, so the D8, which is the phases. So that's the one I understand to be loosely linked to the moon phases. I'm pretty sure anyway. And this one is 3, so I've got expansion, so growth, adaptability and exploration. And I would link that to in those areas of creativity and passion within the justice card, within the earth suit, so resources, doing physical, body, that kind of stuff, which feels very fitting considering I've got a new physio and a new physio regime currently. Obviously I pulled the D10s out, but then we come back in with a D12, and here I've got the house. So these are loosely linked, well, I say loosely, they are very linked, I think, to the houses astrologically, but obviously you can just know them as keywords otherwise. And this comes up in the 6th house, which again is so fitting because the 6th house is health. It's ruled by Virgo, and that is wellness and discipline and personal growth. So this feels like a very good reading for me, I have to say. So that's how I've been using the dice system, and I did just want to give those two a shout out, and I'll link their videos below and stuff because I've thoroughly been enjoying it, and I knew that these die would really work with Lennox's deck. So we're back on a different phone because if you can believe it, the memory got full again. I will finish this video, folks. The last thing that I promised that I haven't done is read the guidebook. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to open it and you can pause and read it on the screen. Usually the quality of the video is grand and that should suit you fine. Here the keywords are impartiality, integrity, results, and lesson. We have what's almost like a storytell little description here that kind of inserts you into the image temporarily. Then we've got a breakdown of the card, which also includes some of Lennox's artistic interpretation. I really enjoy that inclusion, and in this instance it talks about why she chose to keep the scales empty. And then on the other page, as I said before, I'm trying to open it so you can see it really well if you want to pause it now. We have the two depictions of the Peculiar Pathways card and the ரிder-Waite-Smith one, so that you can see where the symbolism was taken from the ரிder-Waite-Smith and included in the Peculiar Pathways, and then they are broken down into sections. So one of the examples is a clear vision, a deep intuition, and the ability to find truth in inconsistencies. Well, we've got some colour breakdowns here, including the colour in the sky and the choices to that as well. So there you have it in the Wonders and Wanderings, the supplemental guide. I'm just having a moment with the back as well because I hadn't actually looked at how pretty the guidebook was originally. And there you go, folks, we got through it together, and I would love to hear your thoughts on this beautiful deck. I'm really excited to now dive into it, and I'm also excited to sort my phone out so it doesn't give me that much aggravation ever again filming. But I wanted to share, and that's what I'm doing. So thanks, folks, and I'll speak to you all soon. Bye.